Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Giggle Economy. I'm your host, as always. My name is David Moscoro, a currently quarantined comedian living here in Austin, Texas, waiting for the time I can get back on stage. But in the meantime, what I do is every week I sit down with a new friend and we talk about the jobs that shaped our lives. I am joined by the very wavy Tristian Spillman, everybody. Tristan. I always get thrown up on your name.
95% of the people in my life mispronounce my name.
Tristan.
Tristian.
See, I added
Tristian.
Tristian. That's my impulse to do it. Yeah. But when you see it spelled,
right,
you have that like variant of like, I think it could be a Tristan.
You're like, oh, when it's a name, it's Tristan, but when they're religion, it's Christian.
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, I know. It's okay. I don't even bother to correct anybody anymore. So
that's all right. Well, my name's like a bunch of Scrabble letters that people don't want to refuse to play the game with. So it's always good to have that too. What's the etymology of your first name?
Well, my mom wanted to name me after the play Tristan and Isolde, but Tristan is the unwanted one. So my dad was also into numerology a little bit, so he decided that if you put an A in there, it changed Tristan, which was a feminine name, into Tristian, the incredibly masculine name. So didn't really pan out, but that was the idea behind it anyway. So.
Speaking of the unwanted one, are you the middle child? What does that mean?
No, I am the third, kind of. I have two half brothers that are like both a decade older than me. So really more than anything, I had like two weird uncles who were like going through puberty while I was like a toddler. So that was a weird combo to try to juggle there. Because anyway, but yeah.
I like it though. By the way, speaking of things I like, very nice background, by the way.
Oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, this actually here is animated from the animated cartoon. They grabbed a picture from the comic book and translated it into a cell. So what I did here is I actually took the inking from the comic book and laid it over top of the cartoon animated cell. So I kind of made that one by melding the two.
Nice. So. For people that aren't on YouTube watching this, it's a picture of the Tick of comic book fame and TV fame and his sidekick Arthur in a motorcycle and a sidecar. And it's very cool. It's got a Ghost Rider flame behind it. So if you're not watching the podcast on YouTube, you're missing out on very good artwork. So
yeah, here, let me get it a little bit closer here, just in case for those of you who are, as a benefit.
I love it.
There you go. Yeah. I just definitely the Tick is my spirit animal for sure.
Yeah. How long have you been getting into those comics? Were you really into the comics when they first came out?
Yeah. That was actually like my first like foray into like successfully predicting like pop culture. When I was a little kid, I actually liked the Tick because I lived up in New Hampshire when he was around in the New England Comics newsletter. He was just like a little comic strip. And then I was like, oh, this guy's crazy. Like it is completely non sequitur. The story didn't really make any even sense. It was almost like the equivalent of like The Simpsons was when it was on the Tracy Ullman show compared to what it turned out to be on the cartoon. Like not even remotely the same. It was just this weird esoteric thing. And then when the comic book came out, I was excited. I was like, oh my God, this weird thing that I like, it's a, comic strip became a comic book. And so then I was like, I was first. And then like, it actually became a cartoon. And I was like, I was already wearing T-shirts of the Tick and stuff like that before the cartoon came out. So like everybody in school like was like hunting me down. Like, what's this weird new thing that you knew about like a year before everybody else did? So I don't know.
Did you like the live action iterations of the show?
Yeah. I mean, I always thought that they kind of went with weird decisions on the guy. I think they were more they had the kind of like the it's hard to say because the guy who wrote and created the comic book is the guy who like was the producer behind it, so obviously he knows better than I did. But they always seemed to cast a guy, the emphasis was his bigness, and really I think the emphasis should have been his manicness, because like it was kind of weird. Like the Patrick Warburton, I think, was the guy who had it for the first time, and he's almost like the antithesis of the Tick. Like the Tick is just like crazy over the top energy, or at least that's the way it always kind of read to me in the comic, and then the cartoon it kind of reaffirmed that. But then like Patrick Warburton was just I'm super laid back, which on some punchlines were super great when he eats a fortune cookie and then he pulls out and he's like, Arthur, look, it's a message from my teeth. Like, and he delivers it with gravitas. Like he seriously believes that it came from his teeth. But I always kind of like the can't remember his first name, but the guy who did the voiceover for the cartoon Townsend. Yeah. He always had like this perfect balance between like a superhero and a madman that was like this unique voice that was just perfect that nobody in the live action ever got right. So that's my way too long opinion on that.
Oh no, I love it. I like that. This is why I ask. I feel like, have you ever been accused of having ADD or some kind of attention deficit disorder?
Oh yeah. Really? I was brought in for like tests like on 3 different occasions to see what was wrong with me. And then I like tested pretty high on the charts. So they were just like, oh, I guess school is just boring for him then. And I felt like I did that episode of The Simpsons where they put like Bart in the smart kids school. So they tried to put me in with like the super academic kids for a couple of years. And I was like, just notably the dumbest one amongst all of them. Just like, and like whenever they like wanted to like be part of like a normal world, they'd come over and hang out at my desk. Like, so I became like I hung out with the nerds of the nerds, you know? So yeah. Like, those are the coolest people. Like if you find like a group of social outcasts and then you find like the ones that don't even fit with those guys, and unless they have like a shed full of animal skins, they're usually, you know, real fun people. So
because my theory was, I was trying to think, like, I think the younger you get into reading, I was trying to say it probably fits into if you're an organized kind of like goes into your job, because this whole podcast is about work and jobs and like that. And thinking about the working environment that we get into, because even as comedians, even as people that write jokes or we do videos online or anything like that, having the organization of a comic book, and I'm thinking maybe graphic novel, which is a different thing, but it makes sense. It makes sense with a comic strip. You're just like with an ADD kid just looking at all the panels
right,
up and
exactly.
down. So
I'm ashamed to admit that like I was fans of comic books for probably 5 or 6 years before I decided that like, okay, maybe I should go back and read what's in the bubbles. Like I was definitely just like, I get it. Like I'd read a comic book in like 45 seconds and then just be like, great, where's the next one? You know? And somewhere on the other side of the world, the artist is like crying a salutary tear because I just like blew past all of his like artwork and like didn't even read a word. And I called myself a comic book fan, but like, it's really hard for me to get in there. So like when I finally took time to actually read, that was really like I get like upset when teachers say, you know, kids can't read comic books, because I really did need that like bridge gap, because I needed to be able to like get into the world of the comic books through the pictures, and then afterwards I was able to get into the world with the pictures and the words, because I could never have hung with an entire novel if I wasn't able to like be in that world. Like if I had to like read like page after page full of words, it just jumbled and was gone, and it was way too much of a burden to carry with me.
I totally get that feeling. I totally understand. Like I was just trying to I lost my train of thought just now, and not because of anything, but just because I was thinking how nice it is when you're reading this thing, how nice it is to go, I'm so more excited because I can, instead of like say like, goodness, it's great if a kid can read The Great Gatsby and picture what new egg and old egg looks like and what Gatsby looks like. Did you picture the characters in your head, and did you have different voices in your head?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or did you have your own voice? Because for me, I always felt like, am I weird? Because I feel like they're reading in my voice, and I'm not making. And I felt like I feel like my imagination, when I was a little kid, I feel like my imagination is stunted a little bit because all I can do until I read more. With comic books, I go, yeah, I'm Superman or I'm Batman. I got that right away. And that was very good for establishing what my imagination could do and kind of picking up on narratives and picking up on, I don't know, just kind of, you kind of get if a guy is wearing a dark cowl and he has like really angry eyes, then you read him kind of angry. And if he's and if he's like with his chest puffed out, you're like, I'm a goody two shoes, you know, it kind of helps out. And I always loved that more than longer books. Like I could never get into a War and Peace anytime before college, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, if there was an illustrated War and Peace, I might have been able to chunk through it. But yeah, with just text, like I always have to carry the mental picture of the story that I'm reading. So it's like I think it's funny. Like one experience I had was I read the first Harry Potter book before I ever saw the movie. So in my head, all the like the Weasleys and Harry are all the little cartoon picture that was provided to you before each of the chapter heads. So as I'm going through the story in my head, I'm immediately going to the card catalog. I have a whole animated story for all those characters. But any of the new characters that got introduced after the first cartoon set of characters that got introduced from the first book are all the live action characters. So like Sirius Black is, Gary Oldman. So in my head, if I go to immediate quick thought about Harry Potter, it'll be like cartoon Ron Weasley having a conversation with Gary Oldman. And in my head, that completely that's just the way it's filed away, and that's fine, And then sometimes I'll take a meta moment and look back in my own imagination and be like, I'm a weird dude. Like,
yeah. I always wonder if people that get really into the novel, like the novels, the big novels, once they transform themselves into movies, the farther away from the time that it was published as a book to the time that it was a movie. Like if there wasn't much of a gap in between Harry Potter, if like Harry Potter came out one year, the next year the movie started, and the year after that the movie came out, would there be, because I look at the drawings on Harry Potter or any book like that, and you're like, yeah, I bet people totally have a different, like Snape was drawn differently in the books.
Right.
And Harry was kind of weird. I mean, like, and you kind of got to ascribe, like, is he Harry or is he Daniel Radcliffe? And then you have to like, but he doesn't act this way. And he's like, I don't know. It just trying to keep, and I think all that's important for getting back to jobs, trying to keep in place when you get to a job, every character that works at the job that you're at. And if you don't know you need to know who the boss is, you need to know who the evil guy is, you need to know who your sidekicks are, and you need to know who all the tertiary characters are.
Right. It is really good to have that, like a book structure system that you can like layer your life over if you have to, like obviously carrying two-dimensional cartoon pictures of like the characters in your life is not the best, but it's better than not having any idea who they are. So yeah.
Because you had the ADD on that stuff, did you find yourself using it to control your ADD, or what was the first thing that you did to kind of, because you have to go and calm it down. What did you use to calm down your ADD? Because I have that really bad from time to time. And I find if I either like meditate a little bit, or sometimes if I'm too stressed, I have to just go like close my eyes, or I have to take a walk around. I have to look at nature, kind of helps me calm down. How do you deal with your ADD?
I have all sorts of techniques that I don't think I even realized I was doing. They were just coping mechanisms that I developed like out of necessity, that I didn't like catalog away as like, these are the procedures that I'm doing for this. But I remember that I read this short story about this guy who ironed his shirt perfectly, and not because he had to get the wrinkles out of his shirt, I get the wrinkles out of his mind, and he decided that was, for him, was the same thing as like raking a path. So to me, that was like the place where I had to go. So I think it became, in school, definitely more than anything else, it was doodling. It was drawing. I had these same little cartoon characters that I drew over and over and over and over again. And it was kind of like I would just try to draw them smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So it came down to where they weren't a cartoon anymore. It was almost like they were becoming like a font, and it was like I could like just get down like all these emotions out in like a real quick set. Like it was like kind of like sometimes a surprise to me. Like I would draw them that small, and I wouldn't, even with as much control as I could want to put into them, you could get variance out of it with just a muscle twitch that would indicate like a different expression. And then I would like think about like what that meant to me, and that was like, that obviously wasn't like the thing that I did every single time and every single moment that I had that was just like the type of thing that I would do to get myself out of there being so much noise and so much confusion and so much input that I had to just get down and just as tiny and as small and as microscopic as I could to get my focus down just on one thing. And then I could like build back out of it.
I appreciate that, because I was a big doodler. I would like write down like American history, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, but in the middle I would draw like little ships or, or something to kind of connect it in my
in
brain.
your memory. Don't those notes go away, but that little ship that you drew in between the notes, like the combination between the two, like really helped.
And that helped me realize that, like, oh, they're from England and they're like colonists, and like really helped me like understand what a colonist is, and like that they came from a different, they were from like, when I think about like how far England is now and you have to fly and how long it takes to fly, like that was on a boat. That took like 2 months on a boat. Like that was crazy, or whatever it was.
Yeah, you draw a picture of a boat and then you draw a little person on the boat and you're like, okay, actually that boat's probably bigger.
Yeah.
But still, that's how big you are. Now you're on that thing for 4 months.
Yeah.
Now, 1/10 of those people are going to get seasick. And that boat's not going to turn around. So now put that in that little boat that you've just drawn there. And like, how real does that get? Like, you know, where do you sleep on that thing? You know, like where do you go to stretch your legs? Like that little solid thing becomes so much more real than just, it took 3 months to get across the sea, period. You know?
By the way, I forgot to mention when you were talking about the man that ironed his shirt, that I dressed up, because I always think of, when I think Tristian Spillman, I always think very well groomed. I remember we were doing something at a convention center to do a panel, I think with your daughter and me. It was like me, you, and your daughter. We were going to go talk about like comedy or comics at the convention center. And you had, I think you had your suit jacket like on your, like in a bag, and you're walking through and you've always looked so nice. And when you hosted the show at the Baghdad in Portland, you always looked so nice right before you went on stage and did all that show. So I wanted to dress. I'm wearing my Three Stooges tie for you. There we go. All three of them.
Very nice.
So
I'm wearing my finest t-shirt that I own.
I was going to wear a t-shirt, but I was like, you know, it's always nice to have an excuse to dress up in a pandemic, totally. You know, like.
My secret is I would put on just basically normal, nice-ish clothes and then throw a blazer over top of it. That's all you really need to do. That just shows, it's like, I always called it my comedy armor. It was like +1 of seriousness. It was like, I'm separate from everybody. There was a comedian called Benny Bobby Baker, and he says, he always talked like a gay pirate. That's his joke. That's just how I'm Benny Bobby Baker. I can't do this guy's voice, but you got to picture it in your head for the advice to really stick. Like, you got to dress different. Yeah. You got to let the audience know that you're the comic. When you walk by, they got to go, that guy's the comic. You know, like you got to have that. Otherwise, the things that you say they'll be like, anybody could have said that. But like if you're the comic, you're putting a new spin on an old idea, or you're not introducing madness. You're like, they'll give you that extra one more step for you to get to the punchline before they're like, no, that's wrong. You know, so it's just like, you got to be different. That's all.
I always love in the American language, because I learned English and Spanish at the same time. I always loved that when I became someone that told jokes on stage, that I was a comic. But also a comic is a book full of stories. And I was like, when you kind of think about it, you become the book full of stories. You're kind of this vehicle for telling stories. So it is kind of a nice title to have as a person. You know, like you're a comic. Like you're the comic. And then a comic book is a vehicle to tell stories. And a comic, when they get on stage, is just a presentation for stories that are probably have jokes in them. And I always thought, I never put the analogy how they're a synonym and then they're different in so many different ways, but they're very similar. It's just so weird to be like,
both of it is like, a lot of people, you know, forget that like stand-up comedy is very much a visual media.
Yeah.
And it's like comics in the same sense that no matter how literary your mind goes, you picture that the art first, and then you read the words afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think the key to stand-up is, for a real punchline to hit with that perfect timing, you have to be explaining the idea and for the audience to get it just a split second before you tell the punchline. Yeah. So it's like, there's like a joy that happens when like the idea pops into their head and then they hear it.
Yeah.
So the best way you can do that.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry.
And I think the best way you can do that is like to physically pose, you know, in the posture that you're doing, what that punchline is going to be, or you give them a clue with your body positioning, and then you tell the punchline.
Yeah.
So that's why I always kind of imagine the last panel of a comic strip as being like, because a lot of people will read a comic strip backwards. They'll look at the panel first, and that almost tells them subconsciously like what the whole bit's gonna be about.
Yeah.
So like sometimes I'll even kind of subconsciously do that when I was trying to change from a different subject in my routine. If I was going from one subject to another one, I would like body position, the same way as I was going back to a callback and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like
the setup to the joke, we're kind of, so when we're setting up the joke, we're kind of audio, in an audio way, we're doing the thought bubble. That's the things, that's what all the setup is. And then you're going to read you're going to look at the picture, which is us on stage. You're going to, the thought bubble's coming. Okay, where's this going? You look at all the visual clues, and then you get the panel of words, and that's what a joke is. And if it's good, then you progress with the story. And if it's bad, you put away the book and you go pick another, or something.
Something like that. There's a lot of times where like in my head, I'll try to like tell myself, and maybe I don't play it out with a comic book image, but a lot of times I'll play it out like, if the punchline didn't end, I'll be like, oh, well, that wasn't the last panel of the strip.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll just like pretend that I was rolling it into the next thought. And that was just, for some reason, they're like, why did you do such a really long setup for that one joke? And I was like, oh, because there was supposed to be a punchline in the middle there, but I could tell it wasn't going to land. So it was
that's another great thing. It does, not landing. Like, can you imagine if they like, if you were to read half the story panel and it cuts off like, we need to get to and then there's nothing. And then you have to look at the other page, bank. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. But I had to see the seam in the middle of the book before I got to the word bank.
Right.
Which takes you out of it for a second. I know this is a long analogy about comic books and comedians, but it's just fun. That's what a podcast is. It's just a fun way to talk to people. And did you know in school what you wanted to be? Like, when this whole thing is about learning what kind of work you wanted to do for the rest of your life, what was the first job that you wanted to do, Tristian?
Well, the first job I like really passionately wanted to have was I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
I could do a bunch of different voices.
What sketch did it for you? You're like, I want to do that.
Mike Myers, just in general, I mean, I was like 30 and I got a podcast, a public access show, even though it was like 15 years, passe, just so I could live out my fantasy of being Mike Myers. And everybody was like, it's a good idea, but it's like way too late. And then I did it again 15 years after that too. So I was like, oh, why not?
Was that on the West Coast, or was that back in like where you grew up?
I've actually had 3. I did one in Arizona and I've done 2 here in Oregon. So
wow. So you moved around all the way, because you lived in the East Coast, and now I know that you live in Arizona, and then you lived in,
right.
So were you an Army brat or something?
I was born in Arizona, and then because of the work, my dad moved to New Hampshire, and then my parents got divorced. And then I was going back and forth between Arizona and New Hampshire. And then I met my wife, and she got pregnant. And actually, we got pregnant when we were in Germany. That's a different story. And then we were deciding where to raise our kid. And most of her family lived up here in Portland, Oregon. So I never really liked Arizona. I did not fit in at all in Arizona. I was a very, very, very weird person in Arizona. It's kind of weird to move to Portland, and like in Arizona, I was by far the weirdest person I knew. And then I moved to Portland, and it's like a guy in a unicycle and a Darth helmet, and the pant. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. That guy rolls by, and you're like, oh, I'm nothing. I'm a normal person.
Isn't it the Unipiper?
The Unipiper, exactly.
So what year did you move to, what time did you move to Portland?
Oh, so it was like the year 2000 at this
point. Oh, okay.
So like I've been here for a long time.
I was thinking you were like a state, like you do have a more aesthetic that says I'm a Pacific Northwest kind of dude. I would have never have guessed Arizona at all.
It's where I was born. That's where I did like most of my child raising, but it was like I was definitely I wouldn't even like do anything. I'd just be sitting in the class, and like people are like, you're the weird one. And I'd be like, yes, that's true. And I kind of enjoy aspiring to achieve that, but I haven't done anything yet.
Yeah. I always got told I think that's a thing that people that end up doing some kind of comedy, maybe not the younger generation that have been like helicopter parented, where they get loved. But I remember maybe people like I was definitely told I was weird, or I was told that I talk too fast because I learned English from Spanish speaking people. So English coming from an English person is like, "Hi, how are you?" English coming from a Spanish speaking person is like this: "You do it very fast. We got stuff to do.
Right.
Hurry it up." And so you're like, "You're very weird. You're a very weird person. Slow down. You're a kid. What do you have to do?" I'm like, "I have to work after school," like, or whatever it is. I have to host at my parents' restaurant or whatever it was that I had to do it that day. So you moved there in 2000 in Portland, and then I love the idea of you having a public access show. I love that idea.
I did Stand Up for Geeks. You can check that out on YouTube. I had a couple episodes of those, and then we had a show going for a while with Shane. I had tried doing a show for myself for a while, and then I thought, why don't I find a show with somebody like who's consistently producing really good material, and then ask him what he would want to do basically. And so I gave him just a sub idea in Stand Up for Geeks, and that was the original idea. Was just like once every couple of months he would run his show, which was Haste. He's going to do a role-playing game there. He wrote a role-playing game, and we were going to do an RPG. So we did that. The first time we did that was in I think 2017 or something like that. So the idea wasn't quite as overused as it is today, but it was a lot of fun, and we didn't get as many viewers, honestly, as we did for the Stand Up for Geeks show. But the number of comedians that wanted to sign up for it was as much as I had as back of the Baghdad days. Like there was tons of comedians that wanted to sign up for that because it was fun.
Yeah,
Shane, really, he made the game, so he obviously really knows how to let people have freedom within the system.
And that was hilarious comedian Shane Hosey, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so it was half his idea, half my idea, and we kind of melted together. And I took the previous panel show format and kind of applied it to the role-playing game, and turned the role-playing game into kind of almost like a British panel show. Anyway, COVID happened and it kind of derailed it. So I've got 16 hours of film in the can, just sitting somewhere that I can't edit. So
I know. I always get it. I always get frustrated with the editing part. All this stuff just goes on YouTube unedited because I just like the idea. If it's a podcast, it's supposed to be a long conversation. I don't want it to feel like I'm taking anything out that I'm not supposed to. I'm not embarrassed of anything. Even if we get doing it embarrassed, I think a couple episodes ago, I was talking about the first thing that I masturbated to. And I was like, well, that's just going to stay on the podcast. And my parents listen to this thing. And that's just I think it's fine. It is what it is now. So it's going to be that. With the public access, and was there a character that you wanted to with the first time you did, or anytime since you were a big fan of Mike Myers, was there a big character that you wanted? You're like, I have to do this character. I do voices. What was one character that you really wanted to do?
Oh man, honestly, not within the public access show. My idea was I was going to just do the host, regular.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna have comedians come on. The first time we did the show I did a show with Big Jim, actually, called The Ha.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had characters come on, like Richie Stratton came on, and he played Dr. Science. So he was doing an Ed Wynn voice. So I'm Dr. Science, so that was a fun thing. But I always figured that if I was on Saturday Night Live, I would be Phil Hartman.
Yeah, because I was like,
I don't who made all the other sketches work, because I understood how comedy timing works without necessarily being the punchline guy.
For sure. No, and I was thinking, I was like, because I do voices in my act and stand up. I do my dad's and other people's voices, but I was like, I can't picture it. I can't picture any people that you do. And I was like, why have I never known that about you? That's me being a bad friend.
Oh, I can only do voices if I can sneak them in a punchline. So I do a joke where I'm like, I do lots of nervous tics, whenever I'm talking to a black guy, I suddenly start talking like a black guy, except for, of course, the black guy I talk like is Morgan Freeman. Andy, my good friend, you should come to my barbecue party. I'm sorry, I haven't have it practiced up, but I was actually James Earl Jones was the first voice, because I could do that guy on a drop of a hat, Luke, my friend, you should come to my barbecue party. So, but James Earl Jones was starting to get a little dated, and I had practiced up the Morgan Freeman really good. And so that was the thing that originally was a catalyst for the joke was I practice, like I want to be a voiceover guy. So I practice the impressions of voiceover guys. So I had the impression of Morgan Freeman, James Earl Jones, and Samuel L. Jackson in my pocket. And then I forget who it was. I think it was Nathan Brennan was like, why is it that every single impression that you have is of a black guy? Like, is that what you're aspiring to be or something? And I'm like, I guess I'm aspiring to be a voiceover artist, and those guys are the best. But so I ended up making the joke out of whenever I hang out with a black guy, I try to do the voiceover.
That's always the thing, because like we grew up in the generation of where Mel Blanc would just do anything, or the guy like, you know, you didn't do Yosemite Sam, and then Daffy Duck would, I don't know, you know, whatever, all those guys that did the voice, not just Mel Blanc, but like the guy that did like what's his name, the Speedy Gonzalez. I was like, when I found out that guy wasn't Mexican, I go, you know, because you kind of just guessed, like, that guy's never met any real Mexicans, or if he has, it's only the worst, because there was only Slowpoke Rodriguez, which was like the guy that like talk like these, and then the Speedy's just that at like if you listen to an audio book on 2 times speed, that's what Speedy Gonzalez was, just the same character sped up. That's all it was.
Well, Hank Azaria and Mel Blanc have said all of their characters that they're doing, like Bugs Bunny is supposed to be his impression of the guy who played Muggsy, like, you know, Kappa. And like that was his impression of Bugs Bunny. And it's terrible. So he's like, it's my own unique voice. And so his voice, so every single one of those classic cartoon characters from the Looney Tunes is him doing a terrible impersonation of a celebrity. So Hank Azaria stole that same technique for The Simpsons, because like it wasn't his original plan to do 75 different voices on The Simpsons. Like he's a comedian. It was an opportunity for him. And they just kept throwing more stuff. Well, what other characters can you do? So like Moe's like a bad impersonation of Robert De Niro or something like that,
or like Humphrey Bogart or something like that.
It's a good technique that you can have a character that you can pull back to over and over and over again, and it doesn't have to be a good impersonation of said character. Just as long as you can always get to that same character consistently, you can use that as in your toolbox. So.
Yeah, you going back to when you were talking about you wanted to be an SNL. What was the first thing you did to kind of help yourself get on that path of trying to get on SNL? Like what did you do to facilitate yourself as a sketch writer or maybe a performer? Did you have I'm basically asking, what's the first comedic thing you did in front of an audience?
I was a liar. I think that's probably the first thing that I did.
I that is a good one. I'll tell you mine in a minute, but yeah, that is a very funny way of saying that you're funny, because I told a story to get out of, and I hoped it would make my mom laugh. But what was yours? I'm excited.
I was in plays and stuff because I wanted to try to get experience at performing, and that was always like my half excuse that like, oh, I'm in this musical that I'm not really that excited about, but it's training for my performance skills, so someday I can be on Saturday Night Live. So I would tell people that like I'm writing ideas for comedy, and I would say that I want to be a comedian, and then it would kind of sound like I had already done comedy, and then they would kind of assume that I already had done comedy, and I kind of liked them assuming that I had done comedy, and so we just kind of went with that for about 6 months of like, just hypothetically I did comedy even though I didn't do comedy. And then some girl in the play signed me up for the open mic night at the Improv in Arizona. And you know, like the host was like, "Oh, this next comedian doesn't even know he's coming up here tonight, like Tristian Spillman." And I had nothing planned or anything else up there, and I just went up there and I just told 2 anecdotes that I had like recently told as funny stories. Did very well. The weird, awkward, nervous energy and the audience expecting it to be terrible because they knew that I wasn't expecting to do it caused it to be a great performance. And like everybody at the table was like, "I'm really sorry, like I thought you were full of it, like you are a comedian." And I'm just like, oh, like this is for me, you know?
Yeah,
like I can show up completely unprepared and pull this off, because I did impromptu speech in high school.
Yeah.
I did that to keep from failing English. My English teacher was like, you have a 0% because you've done nothing. So you can either fail English again, or you can join the speech team. And so I joined the speech team and I got us to state. So she gave me a B. So that's super corrupt, I think. I don't think they should do that.
Well, I think it's like her job, because her job is to find what excites you and to find
Right.
that how to process thoughts and the assignment. Basically, when you rethink school, you're like, can you take direction and understand what that direction is? That's basically all school is, right? You're like, but you're it was one of those things where it's like you're like, oh, I don't want to fail. So what do I have to do? They're like, just do this, and you're like, and your teacher probably were like, just do the bare minimum and I'll pass you. And they're like,
exactly.
Yeah, dude, perfect. I'll do that.
Yeah.
That sounds great. That's just so funny. And you consider yourself, you're just an improv. So you didn't even take improv. You were just impromptu speech.
Right. You would get the very first time I did impromptu speech, I had like been told how to do this properly, but of course I'm ADD, so I really didn't pay attention. So you're given 7 minutes, and during that 7 minutes, you're supposed to prepare your material and perform during that 7 minutes. I didn't listen. So I got 3 different topics, and I just walked immediately to the front of the stage and talked for 7 minutes about hats.
Oh my God.
With having no pre-prepared anything. And I just gave like a big, long, eloquent speech about how the hats aren't for purpose. They're there to look nice. Like people are like, why did dinosaurs have the spikes sticking out of their back? I'm like, they're hats because the ladies like them. That's why they had them, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just went on a big and they were like, you did it wrong, but you did that very well. And so that just became my shtick. So I did that every single time, where I was like, I'm going to punish myself for doing it wrong the first time by pretending that that's what I meant to do every time. So
you were a liar with stage bravado, you know?
Right. With wheels. I can keep talking constantly. A lot of times in life, that's a problem, as you can probably tell by trying to get word in edgewise during this interview. But
yeah. Oh, no.
Great.
I mean, we've seen examples of people that can't stop talking, and it gets them to go far. I mean, look at the current president of the United States. He can't stop fucking talking.
That's who I'm aspiring to be like.
and he doesn't say any truth. So that's
right, exactly. Or content, you know? Like Robin Williams, we made him do like Shakespeare quotes and other people's materials and all sorts of kooky voices if he wanted to talk constantly. Like Donald Trump is allowed to get away with just head flapping about burgers and stuff.
When you moved to Oregon because your wife was pregnant, I'm sure at some point you still wanted to be a comedian, but obviously your family's coming. What was a job that you've had to like buckle down? You're like, did you get the want ads out to be that stereotypical Arthur Miller kind of idea? You're like, what do I have to do something? There's a child on the way. What did you because I feel like you have very strong ambitions. I don't want to just do this. I don't want to just do A. I don't want to be behind a desk. What was your inclination to find a job out to? What were you going to earn money with your new baby coming?
Been penthouse or no house. Like I was just looking for the job that like had the best perks of the Joe jobs that were available for like not being that much responsibility. And when I was growing up, the best job that I ever had was filling vending machines.
Oh.
Even though I filled them in prisons and schools and all sorts of awkward, terrible places, my best friends were working with me. And that's what made the thing that's so great about working there. And I didn't take the time to figure that out. So I got a job here doing that. And I tried doing that when I first got here for like a long time. And I hated it. It was especially, you know, because it was always solitary and it was just the exact opposite of the previous experience. But so I just fell in and out of a bunch of different jobs. And me and my wife, we've always had the philosophy that one person should be working and one person shouldn't be working. Because if you're both working, you're going to pay almost the same amount of money in childcare than you would than having the one person there. So at least 50% of the time, and you know, lately it's all been her. So but I've worked at Netflix was the next longest job I had. After that was I worked at the call center at Netflix. So
that must have been fun.
There's a lot of comedians that went through that call center. Ian Carmel went through that call center. Like it was like they would hire one guy to be fun to keep that place from being like a drudgery misery place, and you were kind of allowed to get away with all sorts of craziness. Like I would like I would like goof on customers and stuff like that, and like other employees would like get reprimanded for it, and then for me they would like, we recorded Tristian at the meeting, let's play it, it's funny, and like all the other like employees would laugh, and like a tenth of them would be like really pissed off because they knew that if they tried to do that they would get in trouble. But like, I'm sure Ian was just totally given free reign when he was working there. But
And what you worked at Netflix? Some people don't know. So for the younger members of our audience, some people might not even know. Did you work at Netflix while it was still a DVD rental place?
Yeah, I worked there when they were like first introducing the streaming, all the way up to when they were talking about getting rid of the DVDs.
I think can't you still get DVDs, or is that gone now?
Yeah,
completely?
no, I think it's still there. For a while there, they were going to switch it over to where they were going to split the company up over into two halves, and half of the employees were going to get ported over to a new company called Quickster. And I remember they introduced it like it was something that we were going to be excited about. They're like, we have exciting news. And then they told us all this news that was like clearly, obviously something that our customer base was going to hate.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, they're like, are there any questions? And I was like, well, you were told us at the beginning there was news that we were all going to be excited about. Was that it? We just found out that like 20 million people are going to be calling up at us, just flaming Cheetos hot mad.
Oh my God. I do like you more now, knowing that you filled vending machine, knowing that you're like, this is what I like about the podcast. I love knowing that one job that I know as soon as you said it, even though I'd never known that fact about you before, like, absolutely you did that. Absolutely. Vending machines make sense with you. ADD, just like looking at it now, just like, you're like, oh, okay. A1, B1, C1, D, like that must be enough. No, that seems, how relaxing was that? How long would it take you to fill a full vending machine, by the way?
Well, it depends. You know, when I was doing it when I was young and I was filling it with my machines, we would like make it into like a track competition to see how fast we could go fill the machines and then go watch Lion King afterwards, because we had gotten 2.5 hours ahead of schedule on the job. It was really cool because we were taking over for my friend's dad had a job as a business, and then he like said, I'm not doing this anymore, and so they let his son take over, and so they're like, there's no way his son will be able to do as fast as I'm doing, and so they hired me. So it was me and him, so it was two of us doing the job of what one person did, and that guy was slow as molasses, so we were way ahead. It was just a lot of fun. I'd
be nervous. I'd be nervous to cut my hand on the spring. I'd be nervous to squish. Like if it was like I remember my favorite vending machines were in like college or like at a weird laundromat, you know, in college, you'd be honey buns, like don't squish. If this motherfucking honey bun is squished, I'm gonna be fucking pissed. And sometimes you would, but sometimes you wouldn't. I was like, I know I would fuck it up. And I would think about people that fill these things, or if they had cigarettes or condoms or any of the weird non-food like things. I'm like, who thinks of all this shit that goes in a vending machine? And how do the prices get ascribed? And why am I always so mad that this is costing me 50 cents or $1 more than it would normally, but it's here anyway and I want something now? All the visual.
Yeah, you see people that like get so mad they'll flip a vending machine over. Like think about what they'll do to the person who's like I would fill them at Swift Trucking. So like I'd have to deal with like those giant trucker mechanics who would get like crazy mad over Funyuns. The really weird thing is it's funny. People always say like, oh, I went to prison. I can be like, oh yeah, I went to prison for 2 years every weekday for about 45 minutes because I filled the vending machines there. You know, it's not exactly the same thing, but I definitely.
Were they stoked to see you?
Stories about that.
Were they like stoked to see you? Like the vending machine guy's here.
It was very weird. I had like a little tiny like uniform that I had to wear that like was because it was like for the cafeteria that looked odd. And then I'd have like all these stacks of ones, like on change and stuff. So I'd have like $200 in like ones and candy on pushing a cart. And like on either side of you is like prisoners. Because like the one section we always had to go through was where the drunk tanks were, is what they call them. Even though they never put drunk people there. Those were like, they put people on PCP and meth and like people who were freaking out. So those, because they didn't want to have to take them all the way through the prison. They just wanted to have them in this chill out section so they didn't have to take them through paperwork first. Because a lot of times they just wait for him to sober up and they just let him go like wild animals out into the street because they're like, I don't want to fill the paperwork on that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, but those are the guys I had to go past with my every single day with my vending machine and my little cart full of snacks and stuff. So one time there was this guy they always had this guy who was like 7 feet tall and his like job was to be the prison bouncer. They just cycle in a new behemoth human being.
Yeah.
And he was basically allowed to like wander around the prison and do what he wanted to and not have to be in a cell, just so as long if anything ever went down, he would be the guy to stop it.
Oh yeah, he's
so
the lookout.
They're always like, get in good with him, because
Yeah.
he's the only guy. He's more in charge of this prison than any of the guards are, honestly. Because if we wanted to, we probably couldn't stop him. It was this one guy who was just crazy huge.
Did you, by working near prisoners, did it ever take away any want to ever commit a crime that would get you landed in a prison?
Yeah, it definitely like ratcheted up the sympathy that I have for prisoners, because they were absolutely just everybody you'd see on the street who just fucked up and happened to get caught that one instance.
Yeah.
You know, like I found out Val Kilmer was going to be the new Batman while I was filling vending machines in prison. Just some random guy I knew from high school was like, did you know Val Kilmer's going to be the new Batman? And I'm like, holy shit, Dylan, what are you doing here? And he's like, drugs. And I was just like, all right. He looked at me like I was stupid. Like, drugs, man. That's why we're all here. And I'm just like, oh, all right. Cool about Batman, though.
It's like it's not really like the dating game, but it is sort of like the dating game. Like, what are you in for? It's like drugs. You know, it's like that kind of like, he said drugs, like that kind of
survey says number one answer.
I also think it was just so funny to think of you. You're just such an affable fellow. You remind me of like a sidekick in a Disney movie. Like who could be mad at you even in a prison? Like, did you have any requests? Like if you brought the wrong, like they're like, don't bring any more of B3 or DF. Like, did they have anything that the prison guards, like people in the jails, hated to have in their vending machines? One thing that didn't sell well at all.
Well, there was for whatever reason, Funyuns have like a puffier bag than all the other bagged chips. So if we ever had a machine that got rocked too often or flipped over, we'd stack them with Funyuns from top to bottom, because those, no matter how hard you try to shake, you can't get them out of the machine. So that was just like, we would like stamp that we would put it on like a Post-it note on the front of the machine, like, because you were children and you shook the machine, you get nothing but Funyuns. And then there's always like that one weird guy in the office. I love Funyuns. So. That
sounds like a very specific level of hell, like Dante's Inferno, just the vending machine full of Funyuns. You're like, no.
We would do that. Like we would definitely like punish them if they were like angry, if they were like upsetting us in any way. Like in the mechanic station, quite frequently, if they pissed us off, we'd put nothing but diet in all of the in all the thing. Like, whatever, guys, you're drinking diet now.
I never thought about the passive aggressive nature of vending machines until now. What a wonderful vending man. I will never, if I ever see him, I will never talk shit if I see a vending machine person.
That was actually one of the sketches that I wanted to do on Saturday Night Live. Was like, I don't know if it was anything that would ever happen, but you always imagine that the sketches that you would get, I would get to write would be like the 1201 slot, the very last night with a weird
those
spot.
Are my favorite. Yeah, those are my favorites.
So I was always kind of inspired by the Tick, I guess. I wanted to do Vendor, Roman god of the vending machine, because like, you know, obviously the Romans didn't have vending machines, but like, and so I would like go around and nobly protect like vending machines from perpetrators of evil. You know,
it'd be funny to see like you could now to riff on the sketch. Where it's like you got someone from Greece that came over to the Roman vending machine. He doesn't know Roman numerals. He's like, I have no idea what this says. It's all not Greek to me because I am Greek or whatever it is.
Right.
That's so dumb. I love that. I love that idea. We only have a couple more minutes left, and we haven't even talked about like any real stuff. But that's how much fun you are. I think it's so much. Let's go back into the Netflix thing, and then I have a game for us. So let's talk a little bit more about Netflix. What was a day since you were dealing with people's entertainment, vending machines? You're dealing with giving someone gratification that way. You're kind of giving them a little treat if they put in the right, if they kind of flowers for Algernon, their right number and letter. You know, they're just kind of like, okay, they get their treat. You know, that's good. For Netflix, what was the shittiest day at Netflix with dealing with someone that like got a movie they didn't like, or lost the DVD, or didn't know how to use it? What was something that you would get that a day of customer service, you're like, I cannot believe I'm getting paid to talk to this idiot? Like, what would be a hard day for you at work?
Oh, my favorite would like if it was mid-grade stupid, it would bug me, right? But if it was like truly epically stupid, I was delighted. It was like a great moment of joy for me when people would complain about how the Netflix that they were stealing from their neighbor is too slow, or that like they're running their 76-inch television screen off of their Cricket wireless phone, as a hotspot, and I'm just like. I would bend over backwards to try to help them as much as possible to make it work. I'd be like, well, what you really need to do is reset the routers. So knock on the door when they're not paying attention. Go find out where the router is. Take the plug out from behind it. It's going to be way easier than actually trying to find the button. And just take them, like, they're ridiculously stupid requests. Just take them as seriously as possible.
You're making them go on like Mr. Bean adventures to fix their Netflix.
My friend Jeremy told me the story about it'll go down in infamy of the Netflix potato.
Can you repeat that?
This is common knowledge. I don't know whether or not you know this.
I don't know.
If your Netflix gets shut off, right?
Yeah.
And you're not getting any more service because you haven't paid for your service, what you can do is you can take a potato and you can wrap it in tin foil and then go over and set it on top of your cable box. And then instantly your Netflix will pop back on as if a customer service agent who has a fucking terrible sense of humor turned it back on for you the moment that you went into your fridge and pulled out a potato and put it on top of your cable box.
How many people fell for the Netflix potato?
I got the phone call back from the Netflix potato lady, like really furiously mad that the Netflix potato didn't work. So I honestly don't know if that was the original Netflix potato, but
oh my God. Well, we didn't know the name of the episode.
Yeah. But
oh my God.
Supposedly that person got fired for that one, but the story was
bummer. That's such a good story.
Right.
I know it's fun. It's like, that's the thing. It's like, come on, it's entertainment. Like, if anything, right. And the person wasn't paying. So what did you expect? We lost a non-paying customer. Who cares? Anyway.
Yeah, it was funny. I actually said to a manager one time, I was like, it costs us like $15 a call for these people to call in. And like, this person has called in like 19 times this month. Yeah. Like, is it okay if I'm just a little bit rude to this guy? Because like, if they keep threatening that they're going to quit Netflix, like maybe that would be good for us.
Yeah.
So I noticed that I got quite a few calls that month of people that were like very much repeat callers. They're like, go ahead, Tristian, talk him into quitting. I think. I don't know if that really happened or if they really set me up for that algorithm, but it started to seem like it.
Oh,
anyway,
man. No. I love the idea. So what was the name? Because I've never done a phone bank job for too long. So what's the title called for the person that supervises the phone bank, the customer service? What is that person called?
Well, there's
customer service manager.
There's customer service, and then there's customer service 2, which is like basically like one of the employees is sort of more in charge, and then there's actually an assistant manager and then manager. So
nice. I just love the idea. It just so much bureaucracy going into customer service, and it just makes me laugh every time. I just like the idea. I picture in my head when I picture customer service, it's like someone's in a bird's nest, like in the TV show Taxi, where Danny DeVito was looking at everybody. Right. Where someone's there, he's just looking at the phone bank and he's like, Tristian, get to my office. How many? You're fired. You did you leave that job, by the way? Were you fired, or did you get able to?
It was because I had to move. I was living in Portland and I just couldn't afford to anymore because our family was getting bigger and we needed more rooms. So got a house in Gresham, and it was just too far of a drive. I kept that job for a year longer than I should have because it was really like one of the best jobs I ever had. It was just like every other job that I had that was great. It really wasn't so much the job itself. It was the people that you're working with that makes the difference, And I definitely think that that's why I've stuck with stand-up comedy more than I've stuck with plays and other forms of performance art. Like, I've done a lot of those different things, but definitely as a group of people to hang out with, I definitely think stand-up comedians are more fun than most of the other groups.
That's the one thing I've really missed. I was thinking about this whole pandemic thing. It's just like how much easier it is to write a joke or write a bit or riff something when you've been in a room full of 20 people getting ready for a mic or a showcase, and how it's kind of like you look at your little walls that you've been set in for like during a pandemic. You can't go outside and you're like, okay, I'm going to write. And then you start writing and you're like, this is garbage. This is bullshit. Nothing matters. I don't know. I have no one to bounce my thoughts off. I hate this. And
I often assume in a vacuum without somebody else to bounce my ideas off of there. I'm like, well, this is a funny idea, but clearly somebody else has written that before. Somebody has to have written it before, like, so I usually, that's what I do love about Facebook is like, I still kind of lukewarm consider myself a comedian because I try to at least like once a week or so, or once a month, probably more realistically, I'll try to fire off like a full-on legit joke on Facebook to see if how I'm doing, how I'm hanging in there, So if it gets more than like 30 likes or something like that, which I just consider that way more normal. I mean, a way higher number than I would for just like a picture or something like that. So
I do like that, and that's what we're gonna do right now. We're going to do the Facebook like equivalent of taking a bit that I have a big box that I found, this Nike box. And I've been writing for a long time. I like you, my ADD manifests in scribble writing. So I will show you, I will zoom in, just a bunch of scribbles that basically I can read, but it's like those stenographers where like only they know the stenographer language that they're doing their shorthand in, and they can read back the minutes perfectly, but only they can. And so I'm going to read some of these, and we're going to see if we can maybe, see.
It's fun when there's some mysteries even to yourself, though.
Oh yeah, it's completely.
Where you're like, what was I writing? Why did I think that was funny?
So this one is just this one. Let's see. This one just says, and I'm not going to read any. I'm not going to ad lib. I'm just going to read it as I put it down, and we're going to try to piecemeal it together where I was. This was probably looking at it. It was a top rip, so a notebook that flipped like this, as opposed to a page that went that way. So that's the kind of notebook that it was. So it just says, hear that song, reminds you of a relationship. Break up, for no one by the Beatles. And then it says, so that says, it says, reminds you of a relationship, break up, for no one by the Beatles. I think I was just like, maybe I was like, I just gotten broken up with, or I was like, some kind of, and then it goes, oh, this is horrible. I'm so glad it's a good thing when you look back at your past self and you're a better person.
Right.
You're like, so this next line is, I am the walrus. She was bulimic. Oh, good job, David. Good job on that one. Let's see this next line. I wish I didn't have to read this, but this is the game I set out for myself. So
there you go.
Come together, control freak in bed. That's what I wrote. So apparently I was just riffing on Beatles titles in this piece of paper. We Can Work It Out was a cheater. That was a song that reminds you of a cheater, apparently. Let's see. All you need. I
don't want to hold your hand.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going for low hanging fruit on that one.
Right.
That one.
All you need is love. Unemployed roommate. So that one's okay. So that was okay. In the USSR, that's when you sleep with a foreign exchange student. Let's see. Day tripper. This is how much of a nerd and so I wrote day tripper. I go druggy. I just wrote the word druggy. Like a real narc. DURGGIE. Let's see.
With like all these like old supposedly romantic songs, you like analyze the lyrics.
Yeah, I don't know.
Extra creepy. Like Daydream Believer. That could,
I think I just think they were all Beatles songs. And my favorite one, I think this is actually kind of funny, is this Rocky Raccoon, girl that ate out of garbage. Ate out of the garbage. You're like, okay.
I see. Unfortunately, my specialty of knowledge base is stuff that isn't cool. So like Beatles songs, I don't really know that well.
No, let's take that little bit. Thank you for listening to that horrible probably.
No, I mean, there's definitely a nugget in there. Like,
No,
you're
yeah.
looking for breakup songs. Like, they all take on new meanings after you have a breakup.
I think I had just, I was just, if I was to put myself honestly where I was, I had probably just gotten the iPod, the old fashioned iPod. And I was just, and I had it way past, like I had the click dial one, not even that one. I had the next generation, the one that was like right before the Nano. Way too late. You know, when they started getting really cheap at Best Buy, like that's when I got it. Like when it was $99. So I know in my head what I did. I got an iPod and I put all my Beatles song on there, and I went to a coffee shop and I started listening to Beatles music, and then I just started thinking about girls that I dated and seeing if I could connect every characteristic of a Beatles song to a different girl that I either wanted to date or had dated, but it wasn't personal. And that's where I think that's where the flaw comes in the joke.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's definitely the like people say like, oh, it has to be personal. And I don't think a joke has to be personal, but the likelihood at this point of you telling a joke that's truly unique without it being personal is pretty small. Like if you do ever write a joke that's completely general and literally anybody can have experienced it, and everybody understands it, and it actually is funny, holy shit, you got gold. Like, keep that. You could probably print that on a t-shirt or something. Like, I've seen people who've like written one or two ideas like that and build an entire comedy career out of it. So
if I think I would have written that, I think I would write it this way. I would think, I think this is how I would do it. And you tell me what you think about songs and thinking about, you think about a joke that you would think about love and song titles. So just think about that while I talk about this. So the way I think I would do this joke in 2021 is I would go, man, I love music. If I wasn't a comedian, I'd probably be a musician because I love listening to music. I love it. I especially love the music of the Beatles. Yeah, any Beatles fans there? And you wait for clap. You know that you're gonna. Hey, people, let's see if people know about the Beatles, right? So you say that line, and then I go, yeah, my favorite Beatle is Paul, which is not, but for the bit, let's just say it's Paul, right? I go, because that dude was a rock star, but he was also a nice guy because he fell in love and made wings and brought his wife along and just like, and he could have just like, I want to be so in love with my wife that I'm like, I don't want to do drugs and fuck groupies. I want to bring my wife to every show and make her play keyboards. Like, I think, like, isn't that ridiculous that he was a rock star in his he had quit the Beatles and he was like 27, 28. And then his next thing is like, I'm gonna go to a farm, and then me and my wife and two of my friends, we're gonna do crappy songs right after being the best band in the world. I go, that's love. If that's not love, you're like, I'm done with it. I'm done with it. No, it's yesterday was today or something. I don't know, but that's what I would probably do. I would probably fix it that way. I'm like, I want to be so in love with a girl that I make her be in my band, and she's like, no, I'll just take photos, and like, you're playing keyboards. Like, that's what I would do. I think that's how I would make that joke better.
Like John forced the band to let Yoko sing along with on a song or whatever, but Paul straight up broke up with the band and started a whole new one with his wife. So I think that's how I'd make it. It was a good nugget of a idea, but it was very, I'm too afraid to talk about, he loved his wife so much, you could start talking about how my favorite Beatle used to be John, until I thought about how romantic Paul is. How romantic would it be that you quit rock and roll and then started a new band? Or I don't know, I think the core of it, if you kept that as the punchline at the end, I think that's funny. And that's you, because you appreciate romance and you appreciate love. You talking about
I could never,
the bulimic, that's not you. That's some other comedian might be able to take that same material and Andrew Dice Clay might have been able to make that rock, but
but that's not who
it's not David Mascoro.
I could never, if I wanted to tag it, I'd be like, I could never love a woman like John Lennon loved a woman, because I saw both John Lennon and Yoko Ono naked on the cover of an album. I'm like, I don't love any woman that much to do that.
I love a woman enough to where I wouldn't do that to her. Right?
Let's show our pubes before they get to the music.
I wouldn't force my wife to have that conversation with her friends over and over again. Like,
Oh,
I love
man.
her that much.
Because you never, and like your kids now, like Sean Lennon totally has to look at his dad's
Yeah,
pubes and his
exactly.
mom's pubes forever. Like they had like,
Right.
oh, so what, so you don't have to do music. You don't, what's a bit that maybe we could riff off of, and that's how we'll end. We'll talk about something that's in your head or something that we just talked about previously. And let's take it to the writer's room and help each other out.
Well, I always think of old bits that I always try to tack on top of. But when you were talking about songs, I had a bit a long time ago where I would talk about scientifically accurate romance songs. Like that's like I have too much appreciation for science to truly be able to accept romance songs on their surface level. You know, like if I could reach the stars, well then my arm would be way too long. And then, like, what type of a gift would that be to give somebody all the stars in the give all the stars in the universe to you? Like, that would be horrible. Like, you're going to crash every celestial being on Earth and destroy all life on Earth as a romantic gesture.
You could talk about how rock stars, we think they're romantic, but they're not really. Like that. What did the guy that wrote 8675309? Was that a compliment?
Yeah, or was stalker?
Yeah, or was exactly. He was like, I want to share it with you. She's an amazing girlfriend. Everyone have my girlfriends in the 80s, her home number and call.
Yeah, I mean, I remember
that's
the first
insane.
time I was singing along with this old, like, kind of like smooth R&B song, and I listened to the words, and I'm like, I was looking in her window, and I'm like, wait, what? Wow.
What the fuck? Yeah, like, no, what the fuck is a sugar pie honey bunch? Like, what the fuck is that? No one knows. No one fucking knows. That's why I kind of like the Little Richard technique, or it got handed down to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Whenever they have to like do any like dirty lyrics or whatever, I think that's what Sugar Pie Honey Bun is like they originally wrote it out to be like dirty, and then they're like, well, you got to fix it, and then they're like, all right, well, we'll put it as Sugar Pie Honey Bunch instead of what it was before. Yeah, like I always was confused by Tutti Frutti, and then I got older. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I get that. He couldn't talk about some stuff like, but he wanted to be on the radio.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
like, yeah, you just kind of have to listen and just guess at what he means, and if you guess, you could probably guess right.
Yeah. Oh man, this has been so much fun. Did you have fun?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
This was great. And tell everybody what you've been doing during everything. If you have any projects, if anyone could follow you anywhere, let them know everything about you, because I want people to like follow you and watch your projects and take care of you during 2021, because 2020 was such a hard year. And I'm so glad that I can connect with you. And every time I talk to one of my friends, I'm so glad that I get to know a little bit more about them. And this has been a really fun talk. So please share where people can get more of you.
You can't. I'm not doing anything.
You're not doing
slouch.
Well, do you want them to follow you on Facebook so you can add more likes to your jokes? Or
definitely. Yeah, follow me on Facebook so you can check out my 1 or 2 jokes I squeak out a month. I am always working on a different comic book. That's like I have to have at least like 2 on the back burner, because I almost know like ahead of time when I start a project that I know it's not going to get finished. Because a comic book is a crazy, huge, unwieldy, big thing. Like, the greatest accomplishment I ever had is that I produced a comic book. I just wrote. I didn't draw it, that's the heavy part.
Yeah.
But I wrote a comic book called The Backyard, and 3 issues got produced. And from the outside, like, I tell that, and people are like, oh, well, that almost sounds like that you started the thing there, but it didn't happen, you know? But I tell that to somebody who actually created a comic book, and I'm like, we got 3 issues done. They're like, 3 issues, like it's a lot of work, but anyway. So I'm working on a thing called Not Hill Dragon Repo.
Nice.
Which we're hoping to get that on Webtoons.
Cool.
So it's about instead of dragon slayers, they go and repossess dragons that have been rented, but the renter of the dragon's gone on default. It's like basically the idea behind it is like, D&D's cool. These campaigns are great, but like, who pays for these things?
Yeah, right.
Like, you know, like who does the paperwork behind the scenes? Like, what's the infrastructure involved in it? You know, so it's kind of like The Office, but occasionally there's bloody battles.
So did you say you put out other ones? Can the people find your other web comics or your other comics anywhere?
I'm really the only one that got, I've left up because most of the other ones were like 3/4 of an issue that they never really got finished. But the only one you can check it out on, and I think it's just facebook.com/the backyard. It's the backyard comic book.
Okay. So well, let me know. Let me know because
group called the Backyard.
Send me. I'll check the link, but you check it too. And if it works out, I'll link it in the description and below the YouTube video, and then everyone can go check it out. You know, it would be a fun project for you. So to do it, and you'd have to give a little bit of artistic license away, where it's like you finish half a comic book if you're a procrastinator. Finish half a comic book and have your audience put it online and say, "Finish my book."
Right. That's what I was kind of thinking of doing, like maybe not even half, like just a quarter of like 3 different comic books.
Yeah.
And then put it on like Kickstarter or something, and then be like, vote on which one of these 3 you'd like to see finished. Because if I go on Kickstarter and say, hey, do you want to see this comic book finished? Yes or no? Like the answer is, if you have to invest money, probably no. But if you're like, hey, which of these 3 do you want? Then you're like, you have an opinion about it now, and then maybe you might be motivated to put your money behind your opinion. I don't know,
dude. You can call it comic book vending machine.
Yeah, there
like
you go.
A1, B1, C1. Make your selection. Which selection do you choose? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's not bad. I really wanted to have every comic to have like a zine. Have you ever made a zine?
I've always wanted to make a zine.
I think that would be really fun if we could try to get that a thing, like where like, because like you can't sell CDs anymore after a show, and asking somebody to buy a T-shirt sometimes is like a little bit of a big financial investment, you know. But for the cost of like 25 cents, you can print out a zine, and then after a show, you can sell that for probably like $1, $2, you know, if you're good, and that could be a pretty good profit maker. And I'm
gonna write it down. If my zine never comes, I'm gonna credit my first zine sale to you. I'm gonna put a little special dedication. I'm gonna write it down right now.
Yeah, look up on how to make a zine.
And
we were saying, between the crossover between comics and comics. So one of the fun things you can try to do as a writing exercise is turn your, if you have, especially if it's a short joke, try to turn it into a strip.
Yeah,
like
perfect.
How would it picture it? You know, and then you can pull that mental picture up, and then you can tell your routine without having to remember all the words. You just remember the picture you have in your head.
You know what? How about this? How about we end the podcast this way? Because I like that we came out of the gloom and mire that is 2020, and I feel so lucky. I lost a very close friend of mine last year. I've lost like work because of last year. It was a rough year, you know, like people have gotten sick, people are in financial straits, like dire straits. So I feel very lucky to be able to like have a good conversation with you, not feel I'm stressed out, but not as stressed out as many other people. And I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. So I want to give myself and you like a little thing. How about we take a one-liner, me and you, we say either it's like 4 or 6 panels. We take a one-liner and finish make a little panel, a little comic strip that's 4 to 6 panels long about our one-liner joke, and then we come back and I share them on my Instagram, and we come back in maybe 2 weeks. We come back
totally
perfect, and I'll share.
I'll fire it out.
Perfect, because this episode will come out very soon, and I'll share it on my Instagram and see what people think, and that'll be great. That'll give us a little project. Let's just make a one-liner joke into a comic book. I challenge you, and you challenge me, and we'll both get them out, and then we'll see how it goes.
Totally.
Perfect. All right. Sounds good. Look forward to those little comic strips. Thank you so much, Tristian Spillman. You've been awesome, and I hope to talk to you again very soon. We'll see you when the strip comes out.
Yeah, totally.
All right.
Thanks,
bye,
man.
buddy.
This is fun.
Bye.